How about Maxx Crosby in a 49ers uniform? That's some of the biggest buzz here in Indianapolis during this NFL Combine. Last night, John Lynch talked about the 49ers roster construction here in 2026. And let's piece a few of John Lynch's thoughts together, beginning with the specific area of the team that he wants to improve coming off of a NFL low sack season in 2026.
You want to get better as a team. Now, one tangible thing, we've always prided ourselves on our defensive front and getting after people. And last year, if you just look at the numbers, now I don't think the numbers are always reflective. I felt like there were games where we put a lot of pressure on, but you got to put the quarterback down. And so that's something that we want to address and we will address.
I then asked John a general question about the genesis of trade discussions. And I figured that they might start here in this city because they host the NFL Combine at this point of every calendar year. And John Lynch did confirm that, a lot of conversations about trades in the future in earnest do begin here in Indianapolis. He added a little bit of a nugget at the end.
3 probably inflection points, usually down at Mobile. You get most GMs are down there, then at Combine, and then at league meetings, So usually at one of those places, a lot of those conversations. And this week, it's kind of everybody's in that mindset coming off the season. Now you're really looking forward. And yes, a lot of those conversations have commenced, and the inception of them was here, and some finish here.
Some trade discussions wrap up here at the NFL Combine. Hope that you caught that little nugget at the end of John Lynch's answer. Here's the Soldiers and Sailors Monument in downtown Indianapolis, right next to my hotel. Beautifully completed with a lot of different statues on the outside. And in the summertime, they've got a big fountain feature here. But here in the winter, even though it's a beautiful day today, nice and warm outside, that fountain is all dried up. You can have a look at it over here. On a hot day in the summer, you can maybe even go swimming. Now, I don't think they'd be happy with that. I think that probably want to stay out of this water. Now, when we talk about trades and big investments for the 49ers in the 2026 season, they were not averse to big investments last offseason. Remember, at the Combine last year, people got spooked by John Lynch, who basically warned that the 49ers would not make big outside free agent investments, but he never ruled out the 49ers investing in their own roster, and they ended up doubling down big time on A-list players. In fact, they even set a record in spending last year. So I think since we reacted to what John Lynch said last year and we set the table well for what they would do in the offseason of fortifying the A-list positions, it's worth listening to how John Lynch characterized the 49ers' approach heading here into 2026.
I think the part that maybe has been misconstrued is that we weren't aggressive in free agency. That may be correct. We did re-sign Brock Purdy, Fred Warner, George Kittle, and Colton McKivitz, and we actually set a franchise record in terms of the cash we spent. So I think we were aggressive. We just didn't go out and do it in free agency. The other part of that, our team was very good, and we saw a lot of really good players leave and go elsewhere. I'm looking at George Payton here, who, got a couple of our players, really good ones. So that's always difficult. But we want to be targeted in free agency. I think that's always a good approach. But our lifebloods always will be the draft, and we want to be very proficient at that as well. We don't have 11 picks this year. We'll see with comp picks and all that where we end up. But, you got to hit on that each and every year.
The 49ers are not afraid of spending for A-listers. And yes, I think that Maxx Crosby qualifies as an A-lister. So look for the 49ers to be aggressive on the front of really good players this offseason. And also look for them to be efficient wherever they can be across the rest of this roster when it comes to the salary cap picture, because that is what has allowed them the salary cap space to spend more aggressively than really any other team in the NFL over the course of the Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch era.
So that sets the table for this 2026 offseason. You know what else is going to set the table for this offseason? a nice look at the 49ers 90-man depth chart. Welcome in to the hotel room here in Indianapolis. John Lynch spoke yesterday. Now we are picking up all the pieces and figuring out exactly what that means for the rest of this 49ers offseason. And the reason that I want to bring up the depth chart is because the 49ers have made a move. John Weeks has been re-signed as their long snapper. Now, this is the 2025 roster. I've got to get the 2026 one up because John Weeks was already on the 2025 one. All right, good news. We've got 2026 ready to go. So entering yesterday, we knew that the 49ers had 57 of 90 spots filled. Now it's going to be 58 of 90. We can move down here to the specialist section, and we can fill in John Weeks, the 40-year-old long snapper. 49ers also in conversations with Thomas Morstead, the kicker and the holder, and obviously Eddie Pinheiro as well. Now, the Eddie Pinheiro situation might be a little bit complicated by the fact that Brandon Aubrey, restricted free agent pending for the Dallas Cowboys, has got a monster of a leg, might want $10 million per year, which would increase the kicker salaries by, a huge amount. The highest paid kicker right now is between $6 and $7 million a season. If Brandon Aubrey, I know that there's going to be some restrictions on that for him since he is a pending RFA, not an unrestricted free agent, but $10 million a year, that's got to send some tremors through the NFL. Owners, I don't think, want to be paying that much for kickers, although Brandon Aubrey, again, his leg is nuclear. That guy, I wouldn't be surprised if one day we saw a 75-yard field goal from maybe not Brandon Aubrey, but from a kicker down the line who's trying to emulate what Brandon Aubrey is able to do. He showed up, a former soccer player, right? So is Eddie Pinheiro. But he showed up into the NFL and started drilling long kicks. And, well, we talk about quality kicking. The 49ers got that last year from Eddie. John Lynch said yesterday that the 49ers do not anticipate using the franchise tag on Eddie Pinheiro at this point. But remember that the tag has been used in the past by the 49ers on a kicker, on Robbie Gould, in order to lengthen a negotiation window. And if they can't find middle ground with Eddie Pinheiro before the start of free agency at that new league year, they can use the franchise tag to make sure that they themselves can exclusively negotiate with Eddie Pinheiro. I don't think that's a guy that you want to walk out of your building. I don't think that's a guy that you want to test the open market all too readily because he was so good for this team in 2025. 27 of 28 on field goals. And like I said, the only miss came here in Indianapolis from 64 yards out off the crossbar. Now, big piece of talking news right now is the Trent Williams situation. And I wrote a big article from the availability with John Lynch yesterday that covers everything 49ers related coming out of Indianapolis. It is up for you on the NFL Combine. It is up for you on the YouTube channel, up on the San Francisco Standard, covering the NFL Combine. You can go ahead and check out that link. This is a little screenshot into the article, and we can talk right now about the Trent Williams situation, which everyone seemed to freak out about yesterday because of the way that it was worded by Adam Schefter. I'm guessing that information came from the agent side of things. Vincent Jackson is the agent for Trent Williams. It dropped about 90 minutes before John Lynch was scheduled to speak here at the NFL Combine. And the tweet said that if Williams and the 49ers do not find an agreement at this contractual impasse, that Trent Williams might become a free agent, which seemed to imply that the 49ers would release Trent Williams, which also happens to make no sense. This is a future Hall of Famer who is still playing at an extremely high level. Somebody who was number 2 in run blocking grade this past year and still top 10 in pass blocking efficiency, despite the fact that he was playing through injury for a good chunk of the season. This is somebody who the 49ers don't have a replacement for. And, here's a news flash. I don't think anyone in the league would have a replacement for Trent Williams if Trent was on their roster. Even a couple years ago, the 49ers had Jalen Moore on the roster. I wouldn't consider that a replacement for Trent Williams. It didn't increase the 49ers' leverage in negotiations with Trent Williams in 2024. So this is one of those situations where the 49ers have a future Hall of Fame player. And I should say it's one of those rare situations where they have a future Hall of Fame player who's still playing at a high level, who they're interested in retaining even at a very advanced age. He's going to be 38 next year. And when you do find yourself in this kind of spot, which is rare, it doesn't happen a whole heck of a lot, all those parameters have to be satisfied, you're going to have to navigate through a contractual minefield. Because if you're the 49ers, you want to be careful about any guaranteed money that you do commit to Trent Williams. You want to make sure that cash flows are reasonable on a year in, year out basis. And if you're Trent Williams still playing at a high level, you have the leverage of being number 71, a very singular player in NFL history, to maximize your earnings and to maximize your job security. So it is a business. The good news is that both the 49ers and Trent Williams have the same goal in mind, and that is to have big number 71 in a 49ers uniform next year, and that is to have big number 71 well compensated, and they're going to find a way to thread this needle just like they did in 2024. We are seeing, I explained this in the article up on the Standard, we are seeing so many knee-jerk reactions, not only from fans, but from people in the media who just don't seem to understand contracts. And it's funny to me because there is a fundamental misunderstanding of how salary cap space works. In this Trent Williams instance, I saw people, even people trying to be level-headed, getting the cap details wrong. For example, there are people out there, and this is a common thing that's being passed around social media right now, saying there's no way that the 49ers would cut Trent Williams because they would only save $4 million if they did cut him against the salary cap. And I'm sorry, that is not true. If they cut Trent Williams, they would save $33 million against the salary cap, because that's the money that is currently scheduled to Trent Williams that they no longer would have to pay. The problem is that people are looking at every single salary cap situation, not just this Trent Williams one, with tunnel vision, only looking at the 2026 setup for the 49ers. When the 49ers, in their large picture strategy, are considering the salary cap over multiple years, and they realize, and they've seen a lot of success through this lens, that the salary cap is connected from year to year. Unused space in 2026 will carry over to 27. They're taking advantage of salary cap inflation. So any money that you save by not paying a certain player this year is money that you save in the big picture. Sure, you might only open up $4 million of 2026 salary cap room if you cut Trent Williams because of the way all that dead money and all that shuffling works, but you would actually open up what matters, $33 million of larger term space, and the 49ers operate in the larger term. They're always carrying over money from season to season. Anyway, people were using that as justification. Oh, the 49ers would not cut Trent Williams this year because they'd only save $4 million. Even though I understand the sentiment of the 49ers not cutting Trent Williams this year, that is not the reason why they won't cut Trent Williams this year. The reason why they won't cut Trent Williams this year is because he is a transcendent player who is still very valuable to them. He will stay because he's very good and immensely valuable to the 49ers, not because the 49ers cap savings would be minimal in the event of a release. My main point is that it's going to cost the 49ers money to keep Trent Williams around and to keep him happy. He understands leverage. His negotiators, his agent, understands leverage and understands the market as well as anybody. In 2024, the 49ers had to drag this out until a few days before the regular season, but they were able to extend Trent Williams' contract and find a way to thread the needle and make this work. Now it might be even a little bit trickier since Trent is older, but the 49ers and Trent Williams' camp are both coming from a similar spot where they want him on this football team and they want to figure out a way to make this work. And I think that they will make it work. It just should be very, very clear to everybody that this is going to cost the 49ers money. It's going to put money in Trent Williams' bank account. And I think that's the way it should be. The guy's a premium talent. He's a future Hall of Famer. You don't get anything for free in this league, and the 49ers should be looking at this in a larger salary cap picture, which is what has allowed them to be as successful as they've been over the course of the past 10 years while spending so much money. To John Lynch's point, he said that the 49ers spent a franchise record amount last year. This is how wrong many people, including the media, got the 49ers offseason last year. This is the cash spent tracker from 2025. They say that the 49ers didn't spend in 2025. Actually, they spent $335 million. Actually, $336 million. $335,952,000 in 2025, doubling down on their A-list pillars. And I'll discuss the A-list pillars here in a second when we look at San Francisco's 90-man roster. The expenditures in 2026 are also going to be large, and they're going to be spearheaded probably by this new contract for Trent Williams as the 49ers move forward and try to extend him beyond the 2026 season. It was always, I think, understood between the 49ers and Trent Williams that he would not be playing on the final 2026 base salary that was preset in 2024. For that, I can show you guys the actual contract so that maybe we have a little bit of a deeper understanding of how all of this is structured and how it all shakes out. So back in 2024, this was negotiated. As you can see, the 49ers kept the base salaries at the league minimum for 2024 and 2025. And then there was this bloated number that I've circled in blue, $22.2 million. It was never meant for Trent Williams to play on that base salary. Just not how it works in this league for players who are really good entering lame duck years. So the 49ers, learning from a big difficulty in 2024 when the Brandon Ayuk and the Trent Williams contract situations stretched out until close to the regular season, decided to add something into this contract that would force an earlier resolution in 2026. And that is circled in red. That is an option bonus. You could see 2.5 million times 4 adds up to 10 million. It's prorated. That is due coming up in about a month. It's not guaranteed right now, but that $10 million will trigger if Trent Williams is still on the roster, and the 49ers don't want to pay out this option bonus without figuring out what is circled here in blue. As it currently stands, Trent Williams is scheduled to make about $33 million this year. I think the 49ers would be okay paying out about that much to Trent Williams if they actually had a little bit more team control beyond 2026. So what you do to thread this needle is you got to figure out, okay, let's get some more team control. How much is that team control going to cost? How can we rearrange the deck chairs here to lower this number that I'm circling with my cursor, nearly $39 million, the salary cap number for 2026. And in my article up on the San Francisco Standard, I have the line that I think that summarizes all of this, and I'm going to pop it open right here on my phone just so I could read the line. I was proud of this line because I think that it took a complex situation and it summarized it into a sentence or two. The easiest win-win path lies in a potential contract extension, which can lower Williams' 2026 cap hit, give the 49ers more team control, and keep the cash flow at an acceptable level for the left tackle. You're trying to satisfy a bunch of different complicated things, and I think that in the NFL, an extension is typically what is able to, the mechanism that can get you to that spot most effectively. Why? Well, because of what I've circled here in red. With an extension, you can add guaranteed money through the form of a signing or option bonus that is actually stretched out against the salary cap for several seasons, and the 49ers are more than okay with that. People who don't understand the salary cap freak out when they see all this money parked into the future. teams and people who do understand the salary cap, like the 49ers, like Howie Roseman and the Philadelphia Eagles, realize that there is going to be a higher cap in future years because it consistently grows alongside league revenues. So parking money into the future is actually smart because the cap hit that you absorb in the future is actually going to be a smaller percentage of that year's salary cap, since the limit will be greater than it is now. So the 49ers are unafraid of dead money. They're unafraid of pushing money into that future, even when a player may not be on the team. That's what void years right here are all about. 49ers are unafraid of that because it is actually decent and I think very good salary cap management when it comes to surfing the wave of the cap. It is why the 49ers have been able to deliver big-time spending, even in a reset year where they focused on the youth of the roster through an 11-player NFL draft. They dropped $336 million onto the roster. That was a franchise record. This is how they continue spending year in and year out, and maybe even how they will be able to open the doors to yet another A-list contract this offseason. If the Raiders are willing to trade Maxx Crosby at a price that the 49ers deem reasonable, if the Raiders are willing to deal with the 49ers, hell yes, that is something that San Francisco would welcome onto the football team. The good news across the defensive line room yesterday comes in the form of returns from injury. Nick Bosa is going to be ready for training camp. He's a foundational pillar. That is why he is highlighted in yellow. Alfred Collins had shoulder surgery leaving the regular season, or leaving this past season. He is also going to be ready for training camp. That's big for the 49ers. The fact that Collins grew and contributed the way that he did as a rookie, despite the fact that he was playing through injury, I think is very, very impressive. And the fact that he's going to be ready for training camp is a big arrow up for both him and the 49ers. Mykel Williams is set to be ready for training camp coming off the torn ACL. Remember the big stat with Mykel Williams. When he was on the field, the 49ers were the number 6 run defense in football this past year. And that includes games without Nick Bosa and without Fred Warner. When Mykel Williams was off the field after his ACL tear against the New York Giants about halfway through, the 49ers were the number 26 run defense in all football. So there are a lot of people who are trying to judge Mykel Williams by counting stats. Oh, he only had the sack, or he only had X amount of pressures. They don't really understand football and what the purpose of Mykel Williams was, especially in his rookie season, and that was to set the edge against the run and then move inside against the guards in pass rushing situations, and he was doing a phenomenal job, especially in part A of that task. And the 49ers cannot wait to have Mykel back, especially given the fact that they're going to be definitely moving to more 5-man fronts under the new defensive coordinator, Raheem Morris. And for that, I've got to give you the best John Lynch quote. In fact, Mike, do you have video of John Lynch talking about, or maybe this came from John Lynch in the breakout session? Yeah, this probably came from John Lynch in the breakout session. I don't think we have video of this, but I do have the quote from John Lynch that I want to read to you before we get to placing Maxx Crosby onto that 90-man roster, just to show you guys where he would fit. I tweeted this yesterday, and I think that this is something that we could even put up onto the screen right now, because it is the most X's and O's, personnel, schematically oriented quote that we got from John Lynch at the NFL Combine. So yes, take a look at this. We're a 4-man front team, but we dabbled in a lot of 5-man fronts last year. Raheem's done a lot more of that because he's done some 3-4 stuff. So there'll be some different body types and things, but just small tweaks. The positive thing for me is that it widens the sample size of prospective players. The guy that wasn't there because we thought he was more of a 3-4 outside backer, maybe there's a spot for him now on the 49ers roster. All right, so back to that roster. This is obviously set up as a standard 4-man front, but 5-man fronts are generally born of a 3-4 home alignment, which means 3 down linemen, 4 linebackers. In that case, your outside linebackers are heavier players. They're outside linebackers who can moonlight as defensive ends. Your linebackers will typically be smaller in a 4-3 alignment. But the 5-man front, which usually comes out of the 3-4 base, means that your typically going to be looking at slightly different body types for the outside linebacker. So there can be certain players whom the 49ers passed over in past seasons whom they might be interested in this time. As you can see from John Lynch's quote, that last line, the guy who wasn't there before because we thought he was more of a 3-4 outside backer, maybe there's a spot for him now. The 49ers are not abandoning a 4-man rush, wide 9 alignment. In fact, in passing situations, they're probably going to stick with exactly that. So what Raheem Morris brings is going to fit exactly with what Chris Kasarik likes to coach up front, and that is the wide 9, that is the elongated front, with the edge rushers having greater range of space to get around offensive tackles. But to stop the run on some of these early downs, the 49ers will be playing with what they call a penny front. And Atlanta did a whole heck of a lot of this when Raheem Morris was there. We see this go back to the Rams when Raheem Morris won a Super Bowl as the defensive coordinator of LA from 2021 to 2023. The 5-man front would mean that players like Mykel Williams, players like a Keon White, also good injury news on that front. He was shot in the ankle after the Super Bowl, but he's going to be ready for training camp. So Williams and Keon White would both not be the furthest exterior defensive linemen in the 49ers setup. They both would be covered by an edge rusher type or an outside linebacker, and both might even get to work against guards even more frequently in a 5-man front. So Mykel and Keon, those are the 49ers' big ends with ability to move into that defensive tackle spot. Versatility around the defensive line is already set up to transition nicely to the greater repertoire that Raheem Morris is expected to bring the 49ers front. Now, where does Maxx Crosby fit into all this, you ask? Well, the 49ers have several different possibilities, but the fact that Mykel and Keon can run on the interior more often under Raheem Morris means that there is definite room for one more premier edge rusher on this team, even if the 49ers do keep Bryce Huff. Now, Bryce Huff, he could be a trade candidate. He could be a pay cut candidate. In fact, that's likely, I think, if he stays with the 49ers. But I don't think that the 49ers are in the business of jettisoning pass rushers who they think can be useful within some context of their system. So if Bryce Huff does stay, you always think about how would this work if the 49ers picked up Maxx Crosby, if the 49ers got another edge rusher to bolster the front, because obviously that is a point of emphasis for a team that finished last in sacks last year. And I think that the fit is easy to see because of the 5-man fronts that the 49ers are going to run under Raheem Morris. I think that the versatility of the guys they already have with Mykel Williams and Keon White is absolutely key. Now, Lynch did say that he wants the 49ers to just double down and find a way to become dominant up front again. And we cannot ignore the defensive tackle position when he talks about that. Remember that the 49ers went as far as to sign Javon Hargrave in 2023 because they felt that they weren't getting enough sacks from defensive tackles. So we can talk about Maxx Crosby until we're blue in the face. We can talk about getting Nick Bosa back, and we could talk about Bryce Huff and the 49ers edge rushers. But unless you're getting a decent push from the inside, that can be defeated by a quarterback simply stepping up in the pocket. I think it was a big year for C.J. West and Alfred Collins in that they started stymieing the run. They really developed for the 49ers over the course of their long rookie seasons. But the 49ers still need to see more pass rushing juice from both of those guys. C.J. West actually went to college his final season here in Indiana. And when they played the Colts here in Indianapolis, C.J. West had 4 pressures. That was toward the end of the regular season. I think that he was really starting to make strides as the pass rusher that the 49ers truly needed. Alfred Collins was playing hurt. I think after this shoulder surgery, once he's more healthy in 2026, you can also expect a step up pass rushing wise, and you could expect a lot of batted passes from Alfred Collins, who's 6'6", 6'7". He batted down a lot of passes at the University of Texas, and the 49ers would expect him to get his big paws up in some throwing lanes for them. But do you add another veteran piece who has more pass rushing upside than what the 49ers showcased from defensive tackle last season? I've got both Evan Anderson and Sebastian Valdez making the 49ers 53-man roster as of right now. Valdez, the Hulk, Evan Anderson, somebody who spent last season on the practice squad with Valdez, but played for the 49ers the season prior in 2024. And actually, I thought showed a little bit of pass rushing juice. Do the 49ers see strides from either of those two guys to feel comfortable about the pass rushing juice they're getting from defensive tackle? Because they already have some good headway on the run defense from CJ West and Alfred Collins. Or do the 49ers feel like they need to bring in more pass rushing lightning at that defensive tackle position? Of course, part of the solution here is the adaptability. If Mykel and Keon White can deliver from the inside in certain alignments against guards, then that takes away some pressure that the 49ers need from defensive tackles to be pass rushing specialists. I understand that it's a complicated moving formula, but the 49ers can work with any and all talent that they can add to the defensive line over the course of this offseason. It's going to be super, super interesting to see them build this front. All right, I'm opening up some of the notes here so we can go through everything that happened yesterday. Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah back in the 49ers front office. He was fired as the general manager of the Minnesota Vikings. George Kittle, 49ers still optimistic about his return timeline. Good blood flow happening to the torn Achilles. That's just dependent on where the Achilles was torn. It was a little bit higher up, which was actually good news for the 49ers. I mentioned Thomas Morstead and the 49ers specialist room with Eddie Pinheiro and John Weeks. They're working on getting those three guys back. And Jawan Jennings, well, why don't we talk about the receiver room? And I wrote about that on the San Francisco Standard. I think that John Lynch actually hinted at free agent moves specifically at two positions yesterday. When you go back and listen to him talk, and you can watch my video from yesterday, all 21 minutes from the press conference featuring cameras are in that video. And then I know I analyzed it along the way. But one thing that John Lynch said during that interview, he was talking about the offensive line. And he mentioned Trent Williams. He mentioned Jake Brendel. He mentioned Dominic Pooney. He mentioned Colton McKivitz. It's basically like a foregone conclusion that the 49ers will have those four starting offensive linemen back in 2026. But the one spot that John Lynch acknowledged that San Francisco, I think, needs to hit the upgrade button on and needs to figure something out at is left guard. Left guard was a big problem for the 49ers in 2025. They started with Ben Barch, and he played solid football, but he hasn't been able to stay healthy for the 49ers. So then they moved to Connor Colby, the rookie 7th-round pick out of Iowa, and he really struggled. He got to the point where George Kittle, fellow Iowa Hawkeye, called Connor Colby out and said he's got to learn how to take care of his body at an NFL level. And I know that Colby was playing through some stuff, and I think that's probably related to what George Kittle said after one of the 49ers games this past year. Some tough love there, but the metrics for Connor Colby weren't good. I don't think that was a surprise. He was a rookie thrust into a starting job. Even Aaron Banks, who earned $19.5 million a year for the Packers, he didn't start his rookie year. He didn't start until his second season with the 49ers, and he was a second-round pick. But the Colby experiment, that was tough for the 49ers. Barch, even though he returned, he got hurt again for San Francisco, and the 49ers had to finish the season with Spencer Burford at the left guard position. He won't be back with the team. I'm thinking that he's going to make way more money than the 49ers are willing to spend at that guard position, and he was a below-average performer for San Francisco at left guard. So the question moving forward is, do you go back to Connor Colby, or do you sign somebody from the outside to man that left guard position? I personally think that this might be a year in which the 49ers pay a little bit more than they're used to paying a veteran for this one particular spot on the offensive line. I love the idea of bringing in Isaac Seumalo. Mike, producer of this channel, believes the 49ers will bring in Dylan Parham, who played for the Raiders over the course of the past 4 years. The 49ers scouted Dylan Parham out of Memphis heavily, leaving the 2022 NFL draft? Yeah, I think it was 2022. Ahead of the 2022 draft, Dylan Parham was on their radar. And players that they are familiar with through that process, they often circle back around to once those players reach free agency. I think that a 1-year short-term deal with a veteran guard like a Siamalu or like a Dylan Parham to plug into that left guard spot for the 49ers makes a whole heck of a lot of sense, because that would in turn allow Connor Colby another season of developmental time. Another spot where the 49ers, I think, can hit in free agency is running back. And yesterday I closed my article up on the San Francisco Standard with this. Thought John Lynch had an excellent quote about the running back position. He said in our sit down with him after the cameras were off that he didn't think that it was a strong running back class, and he didn't really think that it was a strong draft or free agent class for the running backs. But then he added a hell of a kicker quote. Such a good kicker quote that I thought that I should finish my article with it. He said that we tend to see value where people think it's a weak position. So he established that running back is, by consensus, a weak position in both free agency and in the draft. And then he said that we tend to see value there. Well, I see value in the running back free agency class as well. I see it through Kenneth Gainwell. Tyler Algier is also there. Rashad White is also there. But Kenneth Gainwell nearly went 500, receiving and rushing yards for the Pittsburgh Steelers this past year. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He can be trusted running routes out of the backfield. And that's what the 49ers, I think, need above all else to complement Christian McCaffrey, who's coming off of 413 touches, a career high in 2025. I think you need a back who not only can spell Christian McCaffrey, coming off the 413 touch here, but can split time, like at the same time, simultaneously with Christian McCaffrey in the backfield. Imagine having Kenneth Gainwell and Christian McCaffrey lined up simultaneously behind Brock Purdy. One of them can move into the slot and be a credible receiving threat. Defenses won't know if a run is coming or if a pass is coming. I mean, you could even run some kind of wishbone stuff. You could have multiple backs there, including Kyle Juszczyk, who can go out for pass patterns. And I think that you can take this offense to another level. Whether you fortify at tight end or at running back or at receiver or at all three, to me, it doesn't really matter which one gets more attention in this fortification project because of the way that Kyle Shanahan runs his offense. Receivers can catch the ball and run pass routes, and running backs can run pass routes and catch the ball, and receivers can run and they can block, and tight ends are always going to be asked to be adaptable and do both things. Versatility is at the core of what the 49ers do. They want to create a sense of mystery when they break the huddle, so that regardless of what their personnel grouping is, whether there are two backs in there or three wide receivers or three tight ends, regardless of what the personnel grouping is, the defense does not know if they are running or they are passing. And I think that the only way that you start to improve that in a very tangible way for Kyle Shanahan and for Brock Purdy is if you focus on proven, adaptable weapons moving forward. Somebody like Gainwell in that running back room could fit the bill really well for the 49ers. Somebody like Charlie Kolar in the tight end room. I mentioned him here over the course of the past couple of days. Brock Purdy's former teammate from Iowa State, probably the best run blocker in this tight end free agent class, would fit that in the tight end room. And then obviously creating more space at wide receiver, however you do it, could help everything in this 49ers offense, including the run game. I do think that Mike Evans' interest is real for the 49ers. I think that Romeo Doubs' interest is real. But we do have to remember that receiver is going to cost more per yard of production than any other position in the skill position groupings. So you can get Kenny Gainwell probably for $5 to $10 million a year. You're not going to be able to sign Mike Evans or Romeo Doubs for $5 to $10 million per year. So the 49ers, as they're maneuvering through a tricky salary cap situation where their expenditures grow significantly into 2027 and beyond, are going to have to keep that in mind. All right, it was my goal to talk for about 40 minutes straight and then to open this up to questions. I think that I've successfully done that. We're 39 minutes and 23 seconds into this thing. So I'm going to open it up into some questions. I'm going to take a little coffee refuel break right now and see what you guys are asking. Let's wade in. Everybody make sure you sign up for the San Francisco Standard, by the way. The big article that we have up here is I'm confident that it is the most in-depth look at the Trent Williams contractual situation. The most practical look at how the 49ers can solve this and move forward. And also, it is a big, big look at everything that John Lynch talked about yesterday in his evening of intel here at the NFL Scouting Combine. Yes, Kyle Pitts is not available. The Falcons franchise tagged him, so you got to move down the list of available tight ends. Would I sign Linderbaum and sign Gainwell and Pitts? I mean, yeah, if I was running the 49ers in Madden, I could do all three of those things. The problem is that Pitts is not even going to be available to sign because the Falcons are going to franchise tag him. I think Gainwell makes a whole heck of a lot of sense regardless. I think that's something that could happen in real life. But Linderbaum, let's admit that that's a long shot. I mean, this guy is probably going to make $20 million a year. He's going to be the most expensive center ever. And the 49ers have to operate within a salary cap. Have they spent a lot on a center before? Sure, Weston Richburg in 2018, but not nearly as much as Linderbaum will probably command. So the 49ers are interested, and if salary cap mode and all realism were turned off, I would sign all three of the guys that you listed, but we do have to act within the constraints of reality. How realistic is John Franklin Myers? Well, he's probably going to be the highest priced defensive tackle on the market, but if the 49ers are really, really focusing all fire on making a dominant defensive line, well, maybe a Maxx Crosby trade and a signing of John Franklin Myers could really do that, especially since they've moved into more of an adaptable system up front now with Raheem Morris as the defensive coordinator. John Franklin Myers, formerly of the Broncos, really, really good player. I remember being out at St. Andrews in Scotland and talking about him as the biggest fish the 49ers could possibly get along the interior defensive line. They're willing to pay up if they find that to be a need. I talked about the defensive tackle position a little bit earlier. Yes, that could be possible. Any more questions? Wasn't 2026 the year the 49ers targeted to make a serious run at the Super Bowl? They're targeting every year. The media, don't let the media and don't let fans convince you that they didn't target last year as well. I mean, they paid their quarterback, what, 53, 54 million a year. I forgot exactly what it was. They double down on Fred Warner. They double down on George Kittle. You don't spend the most money in franchise history like the 49ers did last season without having serious Super Bowl aspirations. They thought that getting younger was the way forward last year because they had run out of gas in 2024. They were correct. They turned this around from a 6-win operation in 24 to a 13-win operation in 25. Now they're in a better salary cap position to maybe take another A-list swing. That's why we're talking about Maxx Crosby. So yes, maybe their chances are better in 2026 for a Super Bowl, but it's not like this is the singular window. Before every single year, the 49ers are going for this. The strategy, though, has to adapt every single season based on the salary cap and age realities of the moment. Why do I think we haven't heard from Raheem Morris? Well, we hadn't heard from Robert Saleh yet at this point last year. The 49ers generally don't do their introductory press conference for defensive coordinators until the OTA period, or maybe we'll see it at the 49ers. They'll have the local pro day, and sometimes at the local pro day, they can have a defensive coordinator speak, but I don't think that we're going to see this until the week of the NFL draft. All right, guys, I've got to check out of this hotel room in Indy, but it's been great talking to everybody. Made the show about 44, 45 minutes long. Hope we covered everything. I think that we did. Thanks for your questions. Hit that subscribe button and check out the San Francisco Standard. This is the article that's going to really show you and tell you everything from this NFL Combine. I will talk to you very soon.